Welcome to the New Life Stories channel. We hope you will have fun with us. Enjoy watching.
Dad, I need $20. Can you give them to me? 8-year-old Alex asked his father. Fred just turned his head, and Amelia, a tall, unkempt woman with a sweaty face and a dirty towel on her shoulder, emerged from the kitchen. What audacity! She snapped at the boy. Have you lost your mind, sweetie? Since when do you ask for such sums? Did you even ask your father how these so-called dollars are earned? Fred, why are you silent? Why do you need it? The stern father asked. I want to buy flowers. Lilies, the boy whispered, barely holding back tears. Did you hear that? Flowers. Amelia shouted again. Isn't it too early for you to start getting yourself girls, my dear? And if you really need them, go to any flower bed and pick whatever you want. I want lilies. No money, son. Go play. Fred concluded and turned to his wife. Well, are you almost done in there? What are you waiting for? I'm hungry. In a moment, the woman wiped her forehead and, satisfied that her husband didn't yield to their son, went back to the kitchen, making noise with the dishes. Alex stood for a while, realizing he wouldn't get anything, then went outside and slowly walked towards the center. There at the flower kiosk, he saw white lilies with such bright yellow pistils that they seemed artificial, not real. For 3 days, Alex had been wandering around this kiosk. He would approach the display window and stare at the exquisite white flowers, remembering a photo of his mother holding a similar huge bouquet, her happy, laughing face hidden among the lilies. Alex remembered having a different mother, not Amelia, who now lived with him and his father, but his real mother, beautiful, gentle, and kind. She always took care of her little son, told him fairy tales, cooked the most delicious food in the world. And when he fell asleep, she would softly hum songs, gently rocking him with her pleasantly scented hand. Alex turned 5 when she was gone. He recalled the gloomy, rainy day when their apartment was crowded with people. Some were crying, others stood in silence, and some whispered to each other. Think about it, so young. She had so much life ahead. Oh dear, don't even talk about it. What happened? They say her heart seized. Can you imagine? The heart. Why would that happen? What could have troubled her? She was so young, and her husband is a good man. Little Alex listened to these conversations, not understanding if they were about his mother or someone else. But he vividly remembered the stuffiness of the small rooms, someone quietly sobbing, loud lamentations, and his father's frozen face, who never approached him to hug, comfort, or reassure. No one paid attention to Alex, and he approached the coffin several times, trying to see his mother. But it couldn't be her. His mother was different. Completely different. His mother was like the one in that photo with the bouquet of lilies he was looking at now, sighing softly because he couldn't buy them. Still, Alex dared to enter the store. The saleswoman gave him an unfriendly look and asked what he wanted. I need lilies, like these, but I only have 50 rubles. That's all I have, the boy pleaded. Please, sell them to me, and I'll give you whatever's missing. I'll bring it to you. I'll save up. Save up, and then come, the saleswoman interrupted. No, I need them today. Do you understand? Do you want me to do something for you? I can sweep. Take out the trash. I said, go away, beggar, and if you show up here again, I'll report you to the orphanage. But I really need these lilies. Would you like me to kneel? Alex whispered desperately, suddenly hearing a voice behind him. No, brother, never kneel. There should always be a way out. What's your name? Alex. The saleswoman, confused, blushed and hastily spoke. Oh, Christopher. Hello. I didn't notice you. While Christopher turned to the saleswoman, Alex left the booth, sat under its wall, buried his face in his knees, and burst into bitter tears. At that moment, Christopher was talking to the saleswoman. You have a wicked heart, Anna. You're beautiful, of course, but you can't be like this. Christopher, Christopher, I'm sorry. Give me 2 large bouquets of lilies, please, Christopher said instead of responding, and getting what he wanted, walked out onto the street. He immediately saw the boy and handed him 1 bouquet. Here, take it. This is for you. Just tell me, who do you want to congratulate? My mom. It's her birthday, and she always loved these lilies. I see. Your mom is lucky. You're a good son, Christopher praised the boy, and suddenly exclaimed, Wait, why loved? She passed away 3 years ago. I'll take these flowers to her grave. Christopher felt a heavy lump rise in his throat, and it became hard to breathe, and his eyes stung. Who do you live with? With my dad and Amelia. She's my stepmother. See that house with the green roof? That's my home. Christopher sighed deeply and thought about how life is such a dreadful thing. Christopher himself, just like this destitute boy, lost his parents. In fact, he had even less luck. He was an orphan raised in an orphanage. Christopher was 7 when his parents were in a car accident, and relatives refused to take him in. They signed an agreement to place the child in an orphanage. For 2 days, Christopher cried by the window. Then a slender girl with big gray eyes approached him and took his hand. Come with me. My name is Betty. I'm 6 years old. Do you want me to be your sister? Just don't cry. Christopher thought and nodded. For many years, Betty truly became his sister. When they became adults, they realized they couldn't live without each other. Their friendship had long grown into a strong love. When Christopher graduated from the orphanage, Betty cried, saying that now they wouldn't be together. But he vowed to return for her. Unexpectedly, Christopher became wealthy. His grandfather owned a small but successful company and a good 2-story mansion in the regional center. The company was managed by his father, Christopher's uncle, the same one who had refused to take the boy in. He hoped to inherit everything, but the old man arranged it differently. The grandfather felt ashamed before his grandson for not taking him in due to his old age. After his death, he compensated Christopher for everything. The uncle shouted and cursed everyone, even went to court, but Christopher acted tough, taking charge of the company himself. He also evicted his relatives from the grandfather's house, choosing to live there himself, adapting to a new life. He occasionally met Betty, but never mentioned that he no longer lacked anything. He awaited her adulthood, intending to bring her into his home as his wife. He wanted to surprise her, make her happy with unexpected joy. So she continued to think he was still as poor as she was. On Christopher's 18th birthday, he picked up Betty from the orphanage and arranged a romantic evening for her. They walked around the city, and Christopher gave her flowers. She laughed while taking photos with the bouquet. They rode carousels in the park, and in the evening, after buying food, they went to the river, where they spent their first long and unforgettable night together. Christopher kissed his beloved, talking about their upcoming wedding within a month. Meanwhile, Betty needed 2 more weeks in the orphanage for the director to prepare all the necessary documents. While escorting Betty back, Christopher was attacked from behind, receiving a blow to the head. It was his uncle's revenge. Christopher woke up in the hospital, where he spent a long time recovering. The worst part was that he struggled to recall his past. As soon as he regained his health, he set out to find Betty. She left us more than 6 months ago, said the orphanage director. How did you part ways, Christopher? She was so upset. But listen, I know Betty lives in a dormitory on 12th Street. Look for her there. Thank you, Gabriella. I'll definitely find her. Christopher hurried to the specified address, dreaming of embracing his beloved and bringing her home immediately. But as soon as he turned the corner, he stopped, astonished by what he saw. Betty was descending the steps, arm in arm with some man, and she was pregnant. The stranger was leading Betty so tenderly that Christopher had no doubt. He loved the girl. Suddenly, she looked up, saw Christopher, covered her mouth with her hand, and then hurried towards him, leaving her companion behind. Christopher, Christopher, Betty shouted, but he turned away and quickly walked off. unwilling to listen to her explanations. He understood everything and didn't want her to humiliate herself or justify anything to him. Years passed, and now Christopher returned to his hometown. He was married, albeit briefly. Currently, he was in search, and in the few days he spent here, he got to know a flower kiosk salesgirl. They even met a couple of times, and Christopher went to see her again to invite her on a date. However, he overheard her talking to a boy who asked her for white lilies, the same kind Betty loved. The boy patiently waited for the contemplative man to remember him. Then, hugging the precious flowers, he thanked Christopher and went to the bus stop. There, he boarded the arriving bus and left, while Christopher remained motionless, sensing that Alex, for some reason, deeply stirred him. Finally, the man stood up, took his lilies, and walked to his car. He knew what he was going to do. Today was Betty's birthday, and he would find her, congratulate her, and at the same time, make sure that their love remained in their youth, and it was pointless to dream about it. Christopher, how glad I am to see you. Thank you, dear, for everything you do for our shelter. It's all thanks to you that we have a computer class and that huge TV in the hall. All I can, Gabriella. But I also have a request. Tell me where I can find Betty. Betty, Christopher, didn't you know? She passed away. What? When? Christopher jumped up, knocking over his chair. A long time ago, about 3 years ago, shortly before her death. We met. She said she was married, but wanted a divorce. Her husband took her while she was pregnant. I think his name is Brandon, and at that time, he worked as the warden of our dormitory. He's about 20 years older than Betty. As far as I know, her son lives with him now. Reeling as if drunk, Christopher left the shelter and sat behind the wheel. Pure white lilies lay on the seat next to him. A wild scream of inhuman pain tore from Christopher's throat. Could it be that Betty was pregnant with his child, and he treated her like that? Betty, my dear. Forgive me, my girl. Forgive me. When the fog that clouded his eyes dissipated a bit, Christopher went to the city cemetery. There he wandered for a long time, searching for the one who became the last refuge for his beloved. Suddenly he saw her and stood frozen. In a marble vase stood the exact same bouquet of lilies that Christopher had in his hands. Betty, is Alex our son? Our son. The man cried, beating against the stone slab, with Betty looking at him, hiding a smile behind the bouquet of lilies. Meanwhile, Alex returned home and immediately fell under Amelia's angry hand. Where do you roam, parasite, huh? How many times have I told you not to wander around aimlessly? Who will help me? The father indifferently watched as Amelia scolded the boy, but when she pushed him into the yard, someone suddenly intercepted her hand. Don't you dare! Christopher hissed at her and turned Alex to face him, looked into his eyes, and then hugged him tightly. So you finally came. Fred watched Christopher and Alex from the porch. I remember you. You came back then for Betty. And now, I see you came for your son. You will give him to me, Christopher said sharply. I will. I could never be a father to him, just as I couldn't be a husband to Betty. She always loved you. She went with me out of despair. She thought you abandoned her when she got pregnant, but she never loved me. So, she suffered, and she wanted a divorce, but didn't make it. She died. Now go. Amelia will gather all of Alex's documents. Fred didn't tell how he tormented Betty with jealousy, made her cry every day, forced her to be with him. Her heart couldn't take it. And when he said he wouldn't let her and her son leave his house alive, she fell, believing in the sincerity of his words. But Fred didn't want harm to her. He just wanted her to love him. And for 3 years, the feeling of guilt never left him. He couldn't bear to see Alex either. Christopher took his son's hand and walked with him to the car. He quietly told him that he didn't know about him and apologized for it. At some point, Alex stopped, looked back at the house where he endured so much sorrow, and hugged Christopher. But I knew you existed. Mom always said my dad was was the best in the world. I just didn't think it was him. It was you. Many years passed. Every year, on Alina's birthday, 2 huge bouquets of delicate white lilies appeared on her grave. And 2 men, father and son, stood for a long time, looking at her portrait, and then left, only to return here a year later.